Nobody really noticed when she walked into her room. Not her teachers, not the other kids at school, not even her own family most of the time. She had become so good at being invisible that sometimes she wondered if she was actually there at all. Her name was Maya, and she was 16 years old. She lived in a small apartment above her parents' Chinese restaurant, where the smell of fried rice and soy sauce had soaked into every wall, every piece of furniture, every item of clothing she owned. The other kids at school made sure to remind her of it. They'd wrinkle their noses when she passed by in the hallways, making jokes just loud enough for her to hear. Maya's older sister was everything she wasn't. Bright, confident, the kind of person who lit up a room just by entering it. She had graduated top of her class 2 years ago, and now went to a fancy college on the other side of the state. Their parents talked about her constantly, showing off her report cards and awards to customers at the restaurant. They kept a framed photo of her at the front counter, right next to the cash register. There were no photos of Maya. She had tried in the beginning. Back in elementary school, she'd brought home drawings and test papers with good grades, hoping her mom or dad would smile and put them on the fridge like other parents did. But her parents were always too busy, too tired, rushing between the kitchen and the dining area, shouting orders in Cantonese, dealing with difficult customers. Her papers would sit on the counter until they got covered by bills and receipts, eventually thrown away with the junk mail. At school, things weren't any better. Maya sat in the back of every classroom, never raising her hand, never volunteering answers. Her teachers had stopped calling on her years ago. One of them had even told her guidance counselor that she was just there, taking up space but not really contributing anything meaningful. That counselor had looked at her with pity during their one and only meeting, suggesting she consider vocational training instead of college. Maybe she could work in hospitality or retail, the counselor had said with a fake encouraging smile. The other students ignored her most of the time, which was actually better than the alternative. When they did notice her, it was never good. Her clothes came from thrift stores and donation bins, always a season or two out of style, sometimes with small stains her mom couldn't quite wash out. Her backpack had belonged to her sister years ago, held together with safety pins and duct tape. During lunch, she ate leftovers from the restaurant wrapped in aluminum foil, sometimes cold orange chicken, sometimes day-old fried rice. The popular kids would point and laugh, making exaggerated gagging sounds. There was this one girl, Jessica, who seemed to make it her personal mission to remind Maya that she didn't belong. She'd drop comments in the bathroom in the lunch line whenever teachers weren't listening. "Did you shower today?" she'd ask with fake concern. "Your clothes always smell like grease." Her friends would giggle, and Maya would pretend she didn't hear, pretend it didn't hurt, pretend she was somewhere else entirely. At home, Maya had learned not to need anything. Her parents worked 7 days a week, opening the restaurant at 11 in the morning and not closing until 10 at night. By the time they climbed the stairs to their apartment, they were too exhausted for conversation. Dinner was usually silent, just the sound of chopsticks against bowls, everyone too tired to talk. Her mom had stopped asking about school. Her dad had never really started. They had worked so hard to come to this country, to build something from nothing, and they expected their daughters to make it worthwhile. Her sister had delivered. Maya knew she was a disappointment, even if nobody said it out loud. It was there in the way her dad sighed when he looked at her report card, in the way her mom compared her to her sister's friends' kids who were all getting into good colleges. Sometimes Maya would lie awake at night, listening to the sounds of the city through her thin bedroom walls, and wonder what the point of everything was. She wasn't good at anything. She wasn't smart like her sister, wasn't pretty like the popular girls at school, wasn't talented or interesting or special in any way. She was just there, taking up space like her teacher had said. Worthless. The word had stuck in her head ever since she'd overheard Jessica use it one day. "She's literally worthless," Jessica had told her friends, not even bothering to lower her voice. Like, what's the point of her even being here? And the terrible thing was, Maya had wondered the same thing herself. She had started to believe what everyone seemed to think about her, that she would never amount to anything, that she would probably just end up working at her parents' restaurant for the rest of her life, taking orders and bussing tables, becoming another invisible person in an invisible life. The guidance counselor's suggestion didn't seem so far off anymore. Maybe vocational training was all she was capable of. Maybe she should just accept it. The only time Maya felt anything close to peace was when she was alone. She'd take long walks after school, the long way home, just to avoid going back to the apartment where she felt like a ghost. She'd sit in the park and watch people passing by, all of them seeming to have somewhere to go, someone to be. She'd imagine different lives, different versions of herself, but they always felt like fantasies. Nothing real. Nothing possible. By the time Maya started 10th grade, she had perfected the art of not being seen. She wore neutral colors, kept her head down, spoke only when spoken to. She had trained herself not to want things, not to hope for things, because wanting and hoping only led to disappointment. She was 16 years old and already felt like her life was over before it had really begun. She had no idea that everything was about to change, that in just a few weeks she would discover the one thing that would make her feel alive for the first time in her life, that the girl everyone called worthless would find something inside herself that no one, not even she herself, knew existed. But that discovery was still ahead of her. For now she was just another invisible girl in an oversized sweater, walking home alone, believing every terrible thing the world had told her about herself. The music room was at the far end of the school, past the gymnasium and down a hallway most students never used. Maya had walked past it 1,000 times without giving it a second thought. Music was for talented kids, the ones who performed in school assemblies and went to special summer camps. It wasn't for people like her, but 10th grade meant new graduation requirements, and one of them was a semester of arts credit. Maya had tried to sign up for the easiest option, basic art class, but it was full. The guidance counselor, barely looking up from her computer screen, had enrolled her in music appreciation instead. On the first day, Maya slipped into the classroom and took a seat in the very back corner. The room smelled like old wood and dust. There was a piano against one wall, covered with a faded cloth. Guitars hung on another wall, and there were bins full of percussion instruments she didn't know the names of. The other students chatted and laughed, most of them friends who'd signed up together. Maya pulled out her notebook and kept her eyes down. The teacher walked in 5 minutes late. Mr. Rodriguez was probably in his 60s, with gray hair and glasses that sat crooked on his nose. His cardigan had patches on the elbows, and he moved slowly, like someone who was tired deep in their bones. He didn't bother with the usual first day of school speech about rules and expectations. Instead, he went straight to his desk, pressed a button on an old CD player, and closed his eyes. Music filled the room. Piano music, unlike anything Maya had ever heard before. It wasn't the pop songs that played on the radio or the background music at the restaurant. This was different. It moved like water, like wind, like something alive. It started soft and gentle, then grew stronger, more urgent, like it was trying to tell her something important. Some notes felt like sadness, others like hope. All of them wrapped together in a way that made her chest feel tight. Maya forgot where she was. She forgot about the other students, forgot about Mr. Rodriguez standing at the front of the room with his eyes still closed. All she could hear was the music, and all she could feel was something breaking open inside her, something she didn't even know had been locked away. When the piece ended, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Mr. Rodriguez opened his eyes and smiled, a real smile that reached all the way up to make his eyes crinkle. That, he said, was Chopin. Nocturne in E-flat major, written almost 200 years ago by a man who understood that music isn't just sound. It's emotion made real. It's everything you feel but can't find words for. Maya's hand was shaking as she wrote down the name in her notebook. Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. She needed to remember this. She needed to hear it again. The rest of the class passed in a blur. Mr. Rodriguez talked about different composers and musical periods, but Maya barely heard him. That piece of music had done something to her, shifted something fundamental. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt awake. When the bell rang, everyone rushed out. Maya gathered her things slowly, hoping to be the last one to leave. As she walked toward the door, she found herself stopping next to the piano. The cloth covering it was dusty and old. Without really thinking about it, she reached out and pulled the cloth back. The piano was beautiful, old and worn with scratches on its dark wood surface, but beautiful. She'd never been this close to a piano before. The keys were ivory, some of them yellowed with age. She touched one gently and a single note rang out clear and pure. "You play?" Maya jumped, turning to find Mr. Rodriguez watching her from his desk. She shook her head quickly, embarrassed to be caught. "No, I just..." The music you played was really beautiful. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. That piano doesn't get much use anymore. Budget cuts, you know. Most of the music program disappeared years ago. This class is pretty much all that's left. He paused. You're welcome to try it if you want. During lunch after school. I'm usually here. Maya mumbled something that might have been thank you and hurried out. But the invitation stayed with her all day, echoing in her mind like that single piano note she'd played. She came back the next day during lunch. She told herself she was just curious, that she'd look at it for a minute and then leave. But when she sat down on the worn piano bench and looked at all those keys spread out before her, something happened. She pressed down on one, then another. The sounds were random, meaningless, but they were sounds she was making. She was creating something even if she had no idea what she was doing. Mr. Rodriguez appeared from his small office in the back. Start with middle C, he said, sitting down next to her on the bench. He showed her which key it was, then played a simple scale. Try it. Her fingers felt clumsy and thick. The notes came out uneven, some too loud, some barely there. But she did it. She played her first scale. Not bad, Mr. Rodriguez said. Come back tomorrow, so she did. And the day after that. And the day after that. Mr. Rodriguez never asked why she came. Never asked about her life or her family or why a girl who'd never shown interest in music was suddenly spending every free moment at the piano. He just taught her. First the scales, then simple melodies. He gave her photocopied sheet music from his personal collection, showed her how to read notes, explained timing and rhythm. Maya was terrible at first. Her fingers didn't want to do what her brain told them to do. She'd hit wrong notes, lose her place, have to start over and over. But something about it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. When she was playing, even badly, even struggling through the simplest children's songs, she wasn't thinking about Jessica or her parents' disappointment or the guidance counselor's pitying looks. She was just there in that moment trying to make something beautiful. After a few weeks, she could play simple songs all the way through without mistakes. Mary had a little lamb. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Kid stuff, but it felt like magic to her. Her fingers were learning a language, and slowly the piano was starting to speak back to her. One afternoon, Mr. Rodriguez handed her a new piece of sheet music. I think you're ready for this, he said. It was more complex than anything she'd tried before, with both hands playing different parts at the same time. I can't, Maya said automatically. The old reflex, the old belief. Mr. Rodriguez just looked at her with those kind, tired eyes. Yes, you can. You just don't know it yet. That night, lying in bed with the sounds of the restaurant kitchen clanging below, Maya thought about his words. For the first time in her life, someone believed she could do something. More than that, she was starting to believe it herself. The piano had given her something she'd never had before. Not just a skill, not just a hobby. It had given her a voice. And now that she'd found it, she wasn't sure she could ever be silent again. Maya's secret lasted exactly 3 weeks. She'd been so careful. She practiced only when she knew her parents were deep in the dinner rush, when they wouldn't notice she was gone a little longer than usual. She kept the sheet music hidden in her backpack, tucked between textbooks. She never talked about it, never let herself smile too much when she thought about the piano waiting for her in that dusty music room. But her mom found the sheet music while putting away laundry. Maya came home one evening to find her parents sitting at the kitchen table, the photocopied pages spread out between them like evidence of a crime. What is this? Her dad asked, his voice flat and tired. Maya's mouth went dry. It's just, I'm taking a music class. For school. It's required. Required to practice every day? Her mom picked up one of the pages, squinting at the notes like they were written in a foreign language. Required to waste time on this? It's not a waste, Maya said quietly. I'm learning something. Her dad shook his head. You want to learn something? Learn accounting. Learn business management. Learn something that will help you run a restaurant. Find a real job. Music doesn't put food on the table. Your sister never needed these distractions, her mom added. She focused on what mattered. Look where she is now. There it was again. Her sister. The standard Maya could never meet. The shadow she could never escape. Something hot and angry rose up in her chest, something she usually pushed down and swallowed. I'm not her, Maya said louder than she meant to. I'm never going to be her. This is the only thing I'm actually good at. The only thing that makes me feel like I'm not. She stopped herself, but her parents were already shaking their heads. Good at? Her dad's voice rose. "You've been playing for what, a few weeks? You think that makes you good at something? Maya, be realistic. We need you here at the restaurant, especially now with spring semester coming. We're gonna need more help, but no." Her dad stood up, gathering the sheet music. "This stops now. You come home, you do homework, you help at the restaurant. That's it. No more music." He threw the papers in the trash. Maya felt something inside her crack. Not break, not yet, but crack. Like ice starting to split under too much weight. She went to her room without another word and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in around her. The next day at school was worse. Someone had recorded her practicing. She didn't know who or when, but during lunch period, she walked into the cafeteria to find a group of students huddled around a phone laughing. As she got closer, she heard it. Piano music. Her music, the simple piece she'd been working on for Mr. Rodriguez. "Is that supposed to be Beethoven?" someone said, laughing. "It sounds like a cat walking on the keys." "That's the weird Chinese girl from my English class," another voice added. "The one who always smells like fried rice." Jessica's voice cut through the laughter. "Oh my God, I heard about this. She thinks she's going to be a concert pianist or something. Like, imagine being that delusional." Maya stood frozen in the doorway. A few students noticed her and nudged each other, pointing. The laughter got louder. Someone made exaggerated hand movements, mimicking playing piano, and others joined in, all of them looking at her. She turned and ran. Not walked, ran. Down the hallway, past her locker, out the side door near the gym. She kept running until she reached the music room, slamming the door behind her and leaning against it, trying to catch her breath. Mr. Rodriguez looked up from his desk, concerned. "Maya, what happened?" She couldn't answer. The tears came before the words could. Everything spilled out. The recording, the laughter, her parents throwing away her sheet music, being told she was wasting her time, being told she was delusional, being told she was worthless at the one thing that made her feel alive. Mr. Rodriguez let her cry. When she finally stopped, exhausted, he handed her a tissue and sat down at the piano bench. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "When I was young, I wanted to be a concert pianist. I practiced 8 hours a day. I got into a prestigious conservatory. I had everything lined up." He played a few soft notes. "But life doesn't always work out the way we plan. I got injured, couldn't play professionally anymore. Ended up teaching music at a middle school then here. And you know what people told me? That I'd failed. That teaching was what you did when you couldn't make it as a real musician." Maya looked at him surprised. She'd never thought about Mr. Rodriguez as someone with his own broken dreams. "But here's what I learned," he continued. "Music isn't about being the best or proving people wrong or making money. It's about having something that's yours, something that makes you feel human. When I play, even now, even just for myself, I remember who I am. That's not a waste of time. That's everything." "My parents don't understand that," Maya said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I know, and maybe they never will. But Maya, you get to decide what matters to you. You're 16, not 6. They can't actually stop you from playing. They can make it harder, yes, but they can't stop you unless you let them." He stood up and opened a cabinet, pulling out a worn folder. "These are my personal copies. Take them. Practice at school before they arrive, during lunch, whenever you can. If music matters to you, really matters, then you find a way. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is." Maya took the folder, her hands shaking. Inside were pieces by Chopin, Debussy, Beethoven. Real music. "Challenging music, I can't play these," she whispered. "Not yet," Mr. Rodriguez agreed. "But you will, if you don't give up." That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about his words. Her parents wanted her to give up. The kids at school expected her to give up. Part of her wanted to give up too because it would be so much easier to just stop trying. Stop hoping. Stop believing she could be anything other than what everyone told her she was. But another part of her, the part that had woken up when she first heard that Chopin Nocturne refused. That part was angry. Not loud angry, not dramatic angry, but the quiet, determined kind of angry that doesn't fade. The kind that says no when the world says you can't. She got out of bed and dug through the trash until she found her sheet music, crumpled and stained with coffee grounds. She smoothed the pages out and hid them under her mattress along with Mr. Rodriguez's folder. The next morning, Maya woke up at 5. She got dressed quietly, left a note saying she had an early study group, and walked to school in the dark. The security guard let her in, recognizing her from her afternoon practice sessions. She made her way to the music room and turned on the lights. The piano waited for her like an old friend. She sat down, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. Not perfectly, not beautifully, but with everything she had. With all her anger and sadness and stubborn hope. With the voice she'd found and refused to lose. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. At home, her parents were waking up, getting ready for another day at the restaurant. At school, students would soon arrive, ready to mock and judge and dismiss her. But for now, in this moment, it was just Maya and the music. And for the first time in her life, she chose herself. She chose the thing that made her feel real, even if it meant fighting for it every single day. The piano sang under her fingers, and Maya knew she'd never be silent again. Maya had been practicing for 3 months straight every morning before school. When Mr. Rodriguez told her about the competition, "Absolutely not," she said immediately, shaking her head so hard her hair whipped across her face. "No way. Maya, listen, I can't, I'm not good enough. Those competitions are for real musicians. People who've been playing since they were like 5 years old. People with actual talent." Mr. Rodriguez closed the folder he'd been holding and looked at her with that patient expression she'd come to know so well. "I already submitted your application." Maya's stomach dropped. "You what?" "The registration deadline was last week. I entered you in the Regional Young Musicians Competition." "It's in 3 weeks. You can't just—" Maya felt panic rising in her chest. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'll embarrass myself." "I'll embarrass you." "Why would you do this?" "Because you're ready. Because you need to stop hiding. And because sometimes we need someone else to believe in us before we can believe in ourselves." He handed her the folder. "This is the piece I think you should perform. It's challenging, but you can do it." Maya looked at the sheet music with shaking hands. It was a piece they'd been working on, something she loved but hadn't mastered yet. She made mistakes every time she played it. The left-hand part still tripped her up. There were sections where her timing fell apart. "I can't do this in 3 weeks. Then we'll practice every day. Twice a day. I'll be here before school and after school. But Maya, you have to decide. Are you going to let fear win? Or are you going to show up and try?" That night, Maya barely slept. Part of her wanted to tell Mr. Rodriguez to withdraw her application. But another part, the part that had been growing stronger over the past months, was terrified and excited at the same time. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe this was the moment she could prove to everyone, including herself, that she wasn't worthless. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Maya practiced until her fingers ached, until she could play the piece in her sleep. Mr. Rodriguez pushed her harder than he ever had before, stopping her mid-measure to correct tiny details, making her replay sections 50 times until they were perfect. Her parents noticed she was leaving even earlier now, coming home even later. The arguments got worse. Her dad threatened to ground her. Her mom guilt-tripped her about abandoning the family, but Maya kept going. She'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, practice for 2 hours before school, then stay after for another 2 hours. She fell asleep in her afternoon classes. Her grades slipped. She didn't care. The morning of the competition, Maya threw up twice. She hadn't told her parents where she was going, just that she had a school thing. She wore the nicest clothes she owned, a plain black dress she'd found at Goodwill, and took 2 buses to get to the university auditorium where the competition was being held. When she walked in, she knew she'd made a terrible mistake. The lobby was full of teenagers in expensive performance clothes, carrying instrument cases that probably cost more than her family's car. They stood in clusters with their parents, who all looked proud and excited, taking photos and offering last-minute encouragement. Professional-looking teachers gave their students final coaching, adjusting postures and offering bottles of water. Maya stood alone in her thrift store dress, clutching her folder of sheet music. She didn't belong here. These kids had probably taken private lessons their whole lives, had performed in recitals and competitions dozens of times. She'd been playing for less than a year. "There you are." Mr. Rodriguez appeared beside her, slightly out of breath. "I was worried you wouldn't come." "I shouldn't be here," Maya whispered. "Look at these people. Look at me. I am looking at you. And I see someone who worked harder than anyone else here. Someone who found music not because her parents signed her up for lessons, but because she needed it. That matters more than expensive clothes or fancy teachers." A woman with a clipboard called out names, organizing the performers. Maya's name was near the end of the list. She sat with Mr. Rodriguez in the auditorium, watching other competitors perform. They were incredible. A 12-year-old boy played a complex Rachmaninoff piece without a single mistake. A girl about Maya's age performed something so beautiful and technical that the audience gave her a standing ovation. With each performance, Maya's confidence crumbled a little more. She was going to fail. She was going to walk out on that stage and prove that everyone who'd ever doubted her was right. Maya Chen, her name echoed through the auditorium. Mr. Rodriguez squeezed her shoulder. Remember why you play. Not for them. For you. Maya walked down the aisle on legs that felt like water. The stage lights were blinding. The grand piano sat in the center, massive and perfect and terrifying. She could hear whispers from the audience as she walked toward it. Someone made a comment about her dress. Someone else laughed quietly. She sat down at the bench. The piano was fancier than the old upright she practiced on, the keys smooth and responsive under her fingers. She adjusted the bench height, positioned her hands, and looked out at the audience. Hundreds of faces stared back at her, judges with clipboards, parents with cameras, competitors waiting their turn, all of them expecting her to fail. Maya closed her eyes and took a breath. She thought about the first time she'd heard Chopin, how the music had broken something open inside her. She thought about all those early mornings practicing alone in the dark music room while the rest of the world slept. She thought about her parents' disappointment, Jessica's cruelty, the recording that went viral, everyone who'd ever told her she was wasting her time. Then she began to play. The first notes came out shaky. She could feel her hands trembling. But as she continued, something shifted. The music took over. All those hours of practice, all that repetition, her fingers knew what to do even when her mind was panicking. She poured everything into it. Every bit of anger, every moment of sadness, every ounce of stubborn hope. She made mistakes. Her left hand fumbled in one section. She rushed through a part she should have slowed down. But she kept going. She played like someone who had something to prove, not to the judges or the audience, but to herself. The piece built to its climax, powerful and emotional. Maya's whole body moved with the music, lost in it completely. For those few minutes, she wasn't the worthless girl everyone ignored. She wasn't the disappointment daughter or the weird kid who smelled like restaurant food. She was just herself, speaking in the only language that had ever made sense to her. The final chord rang out, fading slowly into silence. Maya opened her eyes. The auditorium was completely quiet. So quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. She'd failed. She'd embarrassed herself just like she knew she would. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then more, until the whole auditorium was applauding. Not the polite golf clap she'd heard after some performances, but real applause. Some people were even standing. Maya stood up from the bench, barely able to process what was happening. She gave a small, awkward bow and walked off stage in a daze. Mr. Rodriguez met her in the wings with tears in his eyes. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That was beautiful." "I made mistakes," she said numbly. "I messed up the middle section. You played from your heart. That's worth more than technical perfection." Maya didn't win first place. When they announced the results an hour later, her name wasn't called for first or second. She was about to accept that she'd tried and failed when they announced third place. Maya Chen. For a moment she couldn't move. Third place. She'd gotten third place. Out of 40 competitors, she'd placed in the top 3. She walked up to receive her certificate and small trophy, still in shock. As she stood on stage with the other winners, cameras flashing, she caught sight of someone filming from the audience. Her heart sank. Not again. Not another video for people to mock. But this time would be different. This time the video would tell a different story. Maya held her trophy and smiled. A real smile. The first genuine smile she'd had in as long as she could remember. Maya didn't check her phone for 2 days after the competition. She was too afraid of what she might find. Another cruel video. More mockery. Proof that her moment of pride had been just another joke for people to laugh at. She went back to her routine. Early morning practice, school. Avoiding eye contact in the hallways, working at the restaurant in the evenings. She kept her trophy hidden in her backpack, taking it out only when she was alone to remind herself that it had really happened. That for one afternoon she'd been good enough. On Monday morning, 3 days after the competition, Mr. Rodriguez found her in the music room before first period. His eyes were bright, excited in a way she'd never seen before. "Maya, have you been online at all this weekend?" She shook her head, feeling her stomach tighten with anxiety. "Why, is it bad?" He pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. "Just watch." It was a video of her performance. Someone had recorded the whole thing and posted it online with the caption, "This girl learned piano in less than a year and placed third in a major competition. Listen to the emotion in her playing. This is what dedication looks like." Maya watched herself on the screen, saw her nervous walk to the piano, saw the moment she closed her eyes and began to play. She could hear the emotion in the music, could see it in the way her whole body moved with each note. She'd been so focused on her mistakes that she hadn't realized how it actually looked, how it sounded. The video had hundreds of thousands of views. The comments were scrolling past so fast she could barely read them. This made me cry. I've never heard someone play with such raw emotion. Who is she? This is incredible. The fact that she taught herself in less than a year makes this even more amazing. This is what happens when you find your true calling. Maya's hands were shaking as she handed the phone back. "I don't understand. How did this happen?" "Someone shared it. Then more people shared it. It's been spreading all weekend." Mr. Rodriguez was smiling so wide his eyes crinkled. "Maya, people are connecting with your story. Not because you're technically perfect, but because you're real." That day at school was surreal. Students she'd never spoken to stopped her in the hallways to say they'd seen the video. Some of them apologized for how they'd treated her. Even Jessica avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in her locker when Maya walked past. But the strangest moment came at lunch. Maya was sitting alone like always when a girl from her history class approached her table. "Can I sit here?" she asked. "I saw your video. I just wanted to tell you that it inspired me to try out for the school play. I've always been too scared, but watching you up there, even though you were terrified, it made me think maybe I could be brave too." Maya nodded, unable to speak. The girl sat down and they ate together in comfortable silence. It was the first time Maya had eaten lunch with someone in 2 years. The really unexpected message came that evening. Maya was helping her dad close up the restaurant when her phone rang from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Maya Chen?" The voice was professional, kind. "My name is Dr. Patricia Wong. I'm the director of the music program at Westfield Conservatory. I saw your competition performance online and I'd like to talk to you about something." Maya's heart started pounding. Westfield Conservatory was one of the best music schools in the region. Her sister would have killed for an opportunity like this. "I'll be direct," Dr. Wong continued. "We don't usually recruit students who've only been playing for such a short time. But there's something in your playing that can't be taught. Raw talent can be developed, but passion, real passion, that's rare. I'd like to offer you a spot in our summer intensive program. Full scholarship. If you do well, we can discuss a full scholarship for your undergraduate education." Maya couldn't breathe. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to decide right now. But Maya, students like you are why I became a teacher. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not good enough. You are. You just needed the chance to prove it." After she hung up, Maya stood in the empty restaurant surrounded by the smell of cooking oil and soy sauce, holding her phone like it might disappear. Her father was in the kitchen counting the register. Her mother was wiping down tables. They had no idea what had just happened. Maya walked into the kitchen. Her parents looked up, surprised by the expression on her face. "I need to show you something," she said quietly. She pulled out her phone and showed them the video. At first, they watched with confused expressions, probably wondering why she was showing them a recording of some piano performance. Then they realized it was her, their daughter on a real stage at a real competition, playing music that made the whole auditorium fall silent. They watched the entire thing without speaking. When it ended, her mother's eyes were wet with tears. "When did you learn to play like this?" her mom asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Over the past few months. The music class I told you about. I've been practicing every morning before school. But why didn't you tell us?" Her father's voice wasn't angry anymore. It was something else. Hurt, maybe, or regret. "Because you said it was a waste of time. Because you threw away my sheet music. Because you told me to focus on real things," Maya's voice cracked. "Because I've spent my whole life trying to be what you wanted and I was never good enough. The piano was the first thing that was mine. The first thing I was actually good at." The silence stretched between them. Her father set down the money he'd been counting and sat heavily in one of the restaurant chairs. "We worked so hard," he said finally. "Your mother and I, we gave up everything to come here, to build this business, to give you and your sister opportunities we never had. We thought we were protecting you from disappointment, from wasting time on dreams that don't come true. But this dream did come true," Maya said. "Someone just called me. From Westfield Conservatory. They're offering me a full scholarship. For summer, maybe for college." Her mother made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "A scholarship?" "Because I didn't give up. Because I found something I loved and I worked for it. Isn't that what you always told us to do? To work hard?" Her father stood up and walked over to her. For a moment, Maya thought he was going to tell her no, that she still needed to help at the restaurant, that music was still a waste of time. Instead, he hugged her. Really hugged her. Not the quick, obligatory hugs from childhood, but the kind of embrace that said everything words couldn't. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry we didn't see you. We were so busy worrying about your future that we forgot to ask what you wanted." Her mother joined the hug, and they stood there in the middle of the empty restaurant, three people who'd spent years not really seeing each other, finally starting to understand. Things didn't magically become perfect after that. Her parents still worried about practical things, still sometimes questioned whether music was a stable career. But they came to her next performance, both of them closing the restaurant early, sitting in the front row with tears in their eyes. At school, Maya was no longer invisible. Some students avoided her now, embarrassed by how they'd treated her. Others, like the girl from history class, became real friends. Jessica transferred to another school that spring. Maya heard through gossip that she'd been dealing with her own problems at home. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made Maya understand that hurt people hurt people. Mr. Rodriguez continued teaching her, refusing payment even when she got a part-time job to try to pay him back. "You're paying me by becoming the musician you were meant to be," he'd say. The video eventually stopped going viral, replaced by newer content, newer stories. But it had done its job. It had shown Maya and everyone who doubted her what was possible when you refused to accept other people's definitions of who you were. On the last day of school, Maya sat at the piano in the empty music room. She played that Chopin nocturne, the piece that had started everything. But this time she wasn't playing for anyone else. Not for her parents, not for the judges, not for the internet. She was playing for herself. For the girl who'd spent 16 years believing she was worthless. For the girl who'd found her voice when everyone told her to be quiet. For the girl who'd learned that sometimes the things other people call worthless are actually priceless. The music filled the room, and Maya smiled. She didn't know exactly what the future held. College, maybe a career in music. Maybe something completely different. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. She wasn't worthless. She never had been. She'd just been waiting for the moment when her fingers touched the piano and everything changed.